Now, to the big politics. The politics that is going to annoy an awful lot of people. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to pretend that's the case. But I told you, for how long? Death, taxes, net zero 2050. I'm not a fan of death or taxes, so you can see how I feel about net zero 2050. But the truth is, this was an inevitability, and the National Party has tonight agreed to match the Prime Minister on this target. The devil is always in the detail. We don't know what has happened in the deal that's been done between the National Party and the Liberal Party. We don't know if it's about policy or if it's about money. We'll hear more, of course, as the interviews roll out tomorrow. Here is what the Deputy Prime Minister had to say today, being very careful with his language because he knows the explosion that's happening on social media from people who do not like net zero, just like they don't love death or taxes.
We are making sure that as we go forward, that the people of regional Australia are in a better position than the terms and the process that were initially delivered to us. We are in support of a process going forward that would go towards a 2050 emissions target. Obviously, that's dependent upon what we see in the Cabinet submission reflecting the conversations and the agreements between myself and the Prime Minister.
As for his deputy?
Today, our party room respectfully got to a position of securing but also growing regional jobs into the future, facing up to our international commitments but making sure we have the safeguards and the protections there to ensure that all people in regional Australia can participate, whether that be protecting their existing job and looking to the new technologies. The technology roadmap that Angus Taylor has put together gives us comfort around where that can take us, and particularly around protecting the existing jobs that are there and how that technology can, in fact, help grow new regional jobs.
Now, the devil is in the detail. The destination is agreed by the two major political parties, but how we get there is the whole point. Remember, we hire a government for the next 3 years, not for the next 30 years. So, like you, I have my doubts about any government making decisions 30 years, 10 elections into the future. But remember, there's only one party that has a target for 2030, and that is the current government. The Labor Party will either match them, meaning politically it goes into a dead issue, with issues potentially happening on the right when it comes to voters. We will know on election night if it's 2016 or it's 2019 and where minor party preferences go. You know my obvious preference, that we should keep the government that we currently have, because the alternative is to legislate the promise of 2050, to lock into law what will happen 30 years from now. No flexibility. They also have very few regional MPs, which means they could simply steamroll the regions. Now, some people tonight will have the feeling of, well, what's the difference? The difference is that, of course, at the heart of the government, you have regional MPs. That's why you get promises like this out of the federal government on the very day when this deal has been made. The Energy Minister has said there will not be a phase out of coal. There will not be a phase out of coal-fired power stations as a result of the deal that's been done or the deals that will be done in Glasgow. Now, you can, again, take people for what their word is, or you can turn around, take up the pinch of salt, or you can take them at face value. But clearly nuclear energy is something that I believe millions of people around the country are willing to talk about. We need to remove all of the legal impediments to that being the case. That presumably would be a mandate if the coalition is returned at the next election. Now, again, I'm not going to muck around, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I know right now that a uniform view of certain people is, that's it, I'm done. They've completely 180'd on where they were 3 years ago. Now, the truth is that the world has changed, whether we like it or not, for the better or the worse, whatever you think. That 3 years ago, when Donald Trump was the President of the United States, and I've shown you before the size of the emissions that are made by the United States. Second, after China, and third, after China, the rest of the world, and then the United States. That in 2019, they weren't even in the Paris Accord. They are now back in the Paris Accord. But, and it's a big but, anything that Joe Biden will say at the Glasgow conference needs to be taken with that pinch of salt, because remember, nothing has passed his parliament for the short term. There is no carbon price in the United States. That is part of that massive $1 trillion series of proposals which may or may not make their way through the Senate. One of the senators who is desperately needed to get the 50 votes to give Joe Biden that particular movement is a bloke from coal country. He won't support it. So wait, watch and see. Devil in the detail. As I've said many times before, and I said it in 2016, I repeated it in 19, and I'll say it again going into 2022. I support minor parties. I want you to have an ideologically pure choice, and that can be best done in the Senate. But with the system that we have, you have to pick where you rank the major parties. Now, in my view, the Greens always go last. And then it's a conversation about, ultimately, second last and third last, or second vote and third vote. I don't trust the Labor Party on China, and I don't trust the Labor Party on climate. Because even after this deal has been done, there are people who say it is not enough, including 2 former Prime Ministers, the Ghost and Karen. They want hard cuts before 2030. Remember, at the last election, Labor wanted an emissions target of 45% by 2030. They wanted aggressive changes to take place. So again, the destination may be the same, but how we get there is what's going to matter. For some people, in the next couple of weeks, they won't be listening. They'll be too angry. You have every right to every emotion that you feel right now. It is not my job to talk you into anything, but it is my job to remind you that it isn't just put them all last. You actually have to rank them. I think there are consequences to changing the government. In the many months, I will show why I think that that is a change we cannot afford to make. But wait, watch and see. There is plenty more in this to run. There is lots of passion. I do not pretend to douse it for a second. Matt Canavan is going to vote hard against it. There will, of course, be no vote in the Parliament, but he is still hard against it. He's on our show tomorrow night, as is Joel Fitzgibbon, as is Pauline Hanson, people who will continue to argue that this is the wrong thing to do. So it's not about falling in behind the government and just repeating their line. We'll give all chances for everyone to have their say, and most of all, I always want to hear from you. But just because I can read the play, like when you're looking at a football game and you can tell what somebody's doing, that's why I said death, taxes, net zero 2050. Not because I love death, not because I love taxes, not because I love net zero.